That's perfect. Thank you. So today is a little shorter class than what we did on the budgeting class. So this would kind of be what's going to walk us into the next thing. And that's just getting out of debt. All right. So most of the people that I talk to as a mortgage lender has debt. Full credit reports and things like that. It's very, very rare that we come across anybody that doesn't have debt. Some sort, and as real estate agents and mortgage professionals were actually get debt. It's good debt because it's affixed to an appreciating asset. It's going to improve their net worth. Pretty much all of their debt outside of that is not. So we're just going to go through some different statistics. We're going to talk about different methodologies for getting out of debt. Some of my takes and thoughts on that, and then we'll just answer questions. Okay, so I think pretty much we want, and let just real quick again, you all remember my story. There's wife and kids at the happiest, most expensive place on earth that I've heard calls. A lot of people debt, so that's why I went with that picture at that time. But again, we had over $500,000 in debt when we were at our worst. That was when we were coming out of 2008, 2007. The world was good. We were doing a bunch of loans, people were selling a bunch of houses, and then it all came crashing down. So we had to dig our way out of that. It wasn't a lot of fun, but we did it. And here we are. So. First one we talk about is just Americans are in a lot of debt. So you got to understand as real estate agents and then your own personal position that pretty much everybody has at least some level of debt. There are a few people, like I said, that you're going to be debt. So the numbers on it are pretty staggering when you actually look at it. So $14,241 average credit card debt per household. Average mortgage debt's a little over $200,000. Average car debt a little over $31,000. Average student loan debt per household. A little over $58,000, and then on average total household debt a little over $158,000 in debt. Total owed by American consumers as a whole, 14.96 trillion. That's what they T. So that's a big boy number. You don't get to see the T number very often. So for some of you guys, that might be encouraging because you have less than that. For some of you all, that might be discouraging because you have more than that. So some of you may be in between, but again, it's one of those things where debt is really something that isn't a great thing, but a lot of us are in. Okay. Now, so this is a little more crazy. Just a few other statistics. When you look at people when they die, all right, 73% of consumers have outstanding debt when they were reported dead. Okay, which is kind of crazy. That's why I put on here till debt do us part on that. Most out with an average of $61,554, including mortgages. And those who did not have a mortgage debt passed away with almost 13,000. 68% of people. This is back in 2017. It's actually a little worse than this now. Experian had put out the latest statistics on it. Died with some sort of credit card debt. So. Again, if we're thinking about debt as being something that's not a good thing, we definitely don't want to go to our grave still paying bills on stuff. All right. So when we talk about debt, part of the problem is that we're constantly being sold debt. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're being sold debt. So like well, pop quiz. What credit card company says what's in your wallet? Capital One. Capital One, what's in your wallet? When banks compete, you win. The neat tree slogan. And then this one's a little bit older. This is for the older I got, maybe the old Sky Real. So see if anybody don't leave home without it. That was American Express. Don't leave home without it. So we're constantly being marketed to. From credit card companies, different things like that. Even at the checkout line, have y'all ever been anywhere? They were like, "Would you like to save 10% off of your purchase today?" Yes. Anybody ever heard that line? So we're even getting sold that when we buy things, and then at our banks, with all the credit card offers, all the different home equity lines of credit, when we go and we put our money in banks, the next thing you know, they're mailing us home equity line offers and credit card offers and things like that. So we're constantly being able, given the opportunity to be able to get in debt for things. And the reality is one of the things that I think Dave Ramsey says a lot, it's really, really funny is we buy things we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And really a lot of times that's what causes us to be in debt. So when we get into debt, I think this is a big thing because a lot of people give up too early. And the analogy that I always use is that getting in debt is like jumping into a 25-foot hole. You jump in a hole, it doesn't take very long to hit the bottom, right? But if you were going to climb out of that hole, it would take you a minute, especially when you're in this kind of shape. It would take you a minute to climb out of that hole, right? So you get to the bottom really, really fast, but it takes patience and time to be able to get out of it. All right. So that's one thing that I would really say is that if you're going to go on the debt-free journey and try to pay your way out of debt, then you really need to understand that it's going to take time. You need to be patient. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Depending on how much debt that you have, it may be like for us, it was a multi-year process as we were undoing $500,000 debt at that right after the housing crash. So it took us really about three and a half years to get back to where we were when that happened. So it's a process that takes time. You gotta be patient, you gotta give yourself a lot of grace because it's easy to get in debt, really, really hard to get out of it. And that's by design. That's why the banks are the biggest, nicest building in every town in America. If you go to any town, if you look up, I promise the tallest building 9 times out of 10 is gonna have a bank logo on it. Okay. So when we talk about getting out of debt, there's a few keys, and some of these will sound familiar from our budgeting class. All right. So I always like to start with put yourself in a place where you could think about how much money could you save, invest, give away, or even blow if you didn't have any payments. You could take a second and just imagine yourself literally outside of your house payment and the bills you pay, water, electric, car insurance, things like that. You had no debt payments whatsoever. What would you do? How different would your vacations look? You know, how much cooler would Christmas be for your kids? Those types of things. So, a few keys to it is number one, you got to stop borrowing money. All right. So, if you want to go totally crazy, cut up all your credit cards, or I had a couple one time that I did financial coaching with. They didn't want to cut up their credit cards. They were scared of that, so they froze them. They put them in a styrofoam cup, filled it up with water, and put them in their freezer. And froze their credit cards. And so that way they could at least get to them. They'd have to fall out for it. Credit card still work if you freeze it, believe it or not. So with that being said, but you got to stop borrowing money. No more loans. Got to put the credit cards away. Got them up. Do whatever you're going to do. The second thing is you got to save money. Okay, that's a little bit counterintuitive, but you will never get out of debt if you don't have an emergency fund. Because when Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express is your emergency fund. What happens is that you pay down, and then life happens and stuff breaks. We talked about that last time. Okay, and then if you don't have any money, you're just going to charge right back up. And you like stay in that cycle of I'm getting out of debt. Oh, water heater blew up all night. I'm getting out of debt. And then you're like me. My dishwasher started with leaking last week. And so I've got a brand new dishwasher and about a kitchen full of buckled floors right now to be replaced. So that's going to be about $8 grand. So my emergency fund's about to get a workout for my floors and dishwasher. So anyway, you got to save some money. And then again, things we talked about, and that we want to create extra income, whether that is selling some stuff. We talked about everybody's got something in their house you haven't touched in 6 months. Somebody will buy on Facebook Marketplace. We've all seen that crazy stuff that's online, that type of stuff. Or you're going to get some kind of side hustle. You're all side hustling real estate, go knock some doors and sell their house. Okay. So there's really some keys. We want to create more income. We got to stop saving. We got to stop spending money we don't have. We got to save some money so that way when things happen, we're ready for them to go back into debt to handle those things. Make sense? All right. So there's a few different ways that you can go about getting out of debt. So we're going to talk about 3 of them today. All right. So the first one is going to be debt consolidation. All right. Debt consolidation is probably my least favorite one. I'll say why here in just a second. So there's pros and cons to it. I'm going to go through the pros and cons of 3 different ones. Pro of debt consolidation is that you may have fewer bills to manage. So if you take all the bills, you put them together, you got 1 payment, or maybe just you went from like 6 payments down to like 2 payments. Just makes it a little bit easier to manage. Second thing you can do is it can free up cash flow. All right. So because if you got big payments, consolidate them in, maybe restrict them out over a lower term, gives you a little bit lower monthly payments. Okay. And it's possible to save money with lower rates. You may have things that are at higher interest rates. The average interest rate right now on a credit card in America is 19.39%. That's 7-minute history. And so with that being said, getting some lower rates, maybe you save you some money that way. The cons to it is most of those debt consolidation loans have some type of upfront fees. So for example, right now, in my world as a loan originator is that we're doing 2, 3, 4 loans a month every month right now. That is debt consolidation loans. Where people are coming to us, hey, I want to refinance my mortgage, pay off some of this other debt, get cash out, pay off some of this other debt. Well, they're having to pay us closing costs to do that, right? So you're gonna have some kind of fees. If you go to like one of these debt consolidation companies, like a lending club or SoFi or any of those companies like that, typically they're gonna charge you a lot of upfront costs to be able to get those types of loans. They're gonna have pretty high interest rates. Again, the second thing is if you are gonna use your home on that, now you're putting the roof over your head at risk because now you've got a bigger lien, or now you've got this home equity line on your house. And if you don't do it right, then the next thing you know, you're in trouble and running the risk of losing your home, which none of us want to do. So there's some risk associated with that if you're leveraging your home to do debt consolidation. And the biggest thing is that debt consolidation doesn't fix the underlying problem of why we get in debt in the first place. Most of the time, the reason why we get in debt is because of bad spending habits, poor money management, or just a lack of money. And so it doesn't fix the problem. All right. So with that being said, that's one of the reasons why I don't really care much for debt consolidation as a methodology to get out of debt, but it's certainly something that you can do. Okay. So that's the first way you can use to get out of debt. Second way is you can do what's called a debt avalanche. Okay. So we're going to talk about avalanches and snowballs. And so the second option is the debt avalanche. The debt avalanche is where you're going to line up all of your bills, and you're going to pay them highest interest first. Okay. So the pros of a debt avalanche is that much like the debt snowball is it gives you a structured methodology to be able to get out of debt. Right. You're going to line them all up. You're going to pay. Okay. Second thing is that you're going to eliminate the highest interest rates first, which means that's probably what's going to save you the most money from a math perspective. Okay. The third pro of it is it will most likely help you get debt free the fastest. Because if you have a lot of debt, because you're going to pay those high interest rates off first, okay, which is going to free up more cash. The cons are is that it's going to take you longer to reduce the number of accounts. So if you have a lot of different accounts, so if you got 5 or 6 or 7 different accounts that you're trying to get paid out of, if you go avalanche, you're going to be paying on 5, 6, 7, 8 accounts for a long time because typically your highest interest rate accounts will usually, not always, but usually be your highest balance, or will be your highest balance accounts. Okay. And a lot of times that's because they went into some kind of default or anything. Credit cards are rigged where like if you're 0.72 seconds late on minimum payment, then it's retroactive interest rate, you're paying all these extra fees and all this stuff. Okay. Second thing is it does require you to put extra money towards debt elimination. So you got to have some sort of debt elimination line item in your budget, which we talked about last time. Right? We want to set aside part of our budget to be able to get out of debt. And then the biggest thing is because we are emotional people, particularly us, I'm gonna lump me into us, right? As salespeople, naturally salespeople are more emotional driven and a little less logic driven in general. It's not always the truth. The most successful salespeople will be more DI on a personality profile than they will be SC. And so with that being said, it can get demotivating if you lack progress, because if your first account is that $25,000 credit card that's at 19%, and you've been paying on it for a year and a half, and now it's only down to 15,000. You still got a long way to go. You're going, frick, this is never going to work, right? And you do have to take into consideration the emotional piece of that, because that's a real piece, whether we choose to admit it or not. So for your logic-minded people, that avalanche a lot of times will make the most sense. Now, last one is my favorite, and what we did to get out of that, and what I kind of gave you all today as far as the handout goes. And for you Zoomers, I'll email that to Ryan. He can get that out too. That's okay. And that's the debt snowball. The debt snowball is where we're gonna line them up, and we're gonna start with lowest balance first. Okay, and those are the ones we're gonna start with. So again, same as the debt avalanche, it provides a structured approach to paying off debt. So we got a plan that we can just execute the plan, follow the recipe. Every time you eliminate a debt, you have more money to stick on the next one, right? So if I started off Well, actually, I'll come back to that. And number three is it gives us the moral victories that'll help you stick with the plan. So the very first debt we paid off, we had borrowed $1,200 from Home Depot on a Home Depot card to build a deck on the back of our house. And we got that credit card with 0% financing for 12 months, because of course we were going to pay it off before the 12 months was over, right? And that how it's supposed to work. And then the housing market kind of went there, and then we didn't pay it off. And the next thing you know, the interest rate on that thing was like 24%. And so I still remember, this is 2023, that was like 15 years ago. I still remember that my $1,200 Home Depot card was the first bill that we paid off. And like, when we got that bill paid off, I think the minimum payment on it was like $40. And when we got that bill paid off, my girls, we took them for $1 ice cream at McDonald's to celebrate. And like my girls still talk about, man, you remember when you paid off that debt? We went and got ice cream, and they're like 20 and 15 now. So dumb stuff the kid remember. But the part of that is it was emotional. Was that the right math thing to do? Like a debt avalanche would be cool. But for me, we needed that moral victory of, all right, cool, we got these 13 accounts that we got to get paid off. Not counting all mortgages and stuff, all the houses sold, but just on the debt accounts that we had, it gave us that little boost of juice to go, you know what, this is gonna work. Like, we're actually gonna be able to pay things off, and it's gonna happen. And every time we would get something paid off, the next account was an $1,800 Capital One card that my wife had. And so with that being said, those little victories along the way was what would really propel us to get to the next one. Now, cons are as simply is that it'll take you a little bit longer probably to get out of that and the avalanche, because you're gonna pay more interest rates, because you're not dealing with the higher interest rates first. And so the second thing is gonna be, you're probably gonna pay more interest over time by doing the debt snowball. Me, what I teach, when I work with coaching clients, even when I work with more, I have a financial review call with one of my mortgage clients yesterday, and that's what he wanted to discuss, was paying off their debt. This is what I teach, and this is what we did to get out of debt ourselves, was the debt snowball. So the handout that I've given to you guys just gives you easy instructions. So this actually came out of Financial Peace University, and so just gives you easy instructions on how to set up your debt snowball, and then you actually do have a sheet behind it. And again, if you want this in electronic format, just let me know. Actually, I'll get it around to everybody. So it's going to have where you can write everything off, what you owe, who you owe, how much you owe, what the minimum payment is, what the new payment is you're going to pay on it. You stack them all up and you kind of cross them off the list. We actually had one of these on our refrigerator for a very long time. It felt like, but we had it and we were working off of it. So that's why I wanted to give that to you guys today. So you can consolidate that, do that avalanche, do this debt snowball. There's not really a quote unquote wrong way to do it. As long as it accomplishes you getting out of debt, you just have to decide number one, what's going to make the most sense for you, and what's going to be best for you and your family situation. Make sense? Okay, cool. Last few things. Again, just go through this, list all your debts, lowest balance first, review your budget, determine how much extra you can pay all of your extra to the account with the lowest balance only. You can pay minimum payments to everything else. Once the first account is paid off, do a little dance, celebration, move on to the next one. Okay. Apply extra plus your old minimum payment plus the new minimum payment in the next account. So I just paid off an account with a $40 minimum payment, and the next account I go to has got a $50 minimum payment. I was paying $50 extra on that account. 50 plus 40 is 90 plus $50 minimum payment. Now I got $140 a month that I'm paying on that account. Cash flow didn't change. You're still paying the same amount of money out every month. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay. And so, but that's how, because the next thing you know, you get to that second or that third, that fourth account, because you know you're paying $200-300 every month, and it starts to really go fast at that point. Okay. Repeat until you're debt free. That's how you execute that snowball. All right. I always like to address student loan debt, because student loan debt is kind of the elephant in the room. It's one of those things where, it really is, when I think about this in the context of my mortgage, when I first started doing home loans in 2003, if I saw somebody with $40,000 or $50,000 in student loan debt, that was a lot. $40,000 or $50,000 in student loan debt right now, that might be money. Probably my record right now is I just did a loan for two husband and wife. They're both veterinarians. They had just over $500,000 in student loan debt between the two of them. Okay. And I can tell you countless stories of different people in different spots where I'm just going, oh, this is bad. and so student loan debt is the thing. And so with that being said, again, Americans owe $1.75 trillion in student loan debt. Average student loan debt for the class of 2021, which graduated a couple of years ago, they don't have the class 2022 yet, it's $31,100. There are 43.5 million people in the United States that have student loan debt. 7% of all students, student loans are actually in default. 7% of them actually, they're not even paying anymore. They're actually going bad. And the average monthly student loan payment is $351 a month. If you have government-sponsored student loans, they're actually the only debt you can't pay from. We all got this one brother in our life. His name's Uncle Sam, and that dude gets paid. Ain't no doubt about it. Okay. So student loan debt is a big deal. So here's just some advice around student loan debt if you have it. Okay. Number one, you want to try to avoid at all costs to income-based repayment plans because you're actually going backwards, particularly if you have unsubsidized student loans. So two types of student loans, you have subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized means the government's covering your interest. Unsubsidized means you're responsible for interest. If you have an unsubsidized student loan and you're only making the minimum payment, you're actually going backwards every month. That means your balance is escalating. Okay, so you want to avoid income-based repayment plans if at all possible. You want to try to make sure that you've got your loans on a standard repayment plan. Three types of repayment plans you can set up: student loans, income-based, graduated, and standard. Standard is going to turn your student loan into a loan that acts just like your mortgage or your car. You're going to have a start date, you're going to have an end date. It's going to be the same payment for the whole time of that term. Okay, consider moving to longer terms to lower the monthly standard payment plans. Right, so student loans act like mortgages in that they don't have any type of prepayment penalty. So you can always pay extra, you can just never pay less. So if they'll give you a 20-year term, I've actually seen student loans drag out. Depending on getting some of these 6-figure student loans, I've actually seen 25-year terms on student loans. So go ahead and take the longest term they'll give you. That way you can be on a standard repayment plan. And then you can always pay extra to it later if you need to. Okay. You definitely always want to be looking at the opportunities to consolidate student loan debts to lower interest rates. Right. That's a big one. We have a lot of people who don't realize that they can consolidate. Every year, the government for what would be considered Stafford, and I can't think what the other student loan program is called. I lost the name. But anyway, there's two main types of student loans for undergrad. They publish what the rate for those student loans is going to be for the fiscal year every year. So if you're not exactly sure what your rate is on your student loan, you can actually just Google student loan interest rate chart, and you should be able to pull that up. So you go, if my student loan was from August 2019, you should be able to go to that chart and tell you all loans that were done from June 2019 through June 30th of 2020 was this rate. Okay, because they're not credit based. It is very, unless you're doing private student loans, which most of the colleges and universities are out here, unless you went through like a MedQuest or ITT Tech or something like that, most likely you have a government student loan. Okay, so you want to see if you can consolidate. Don't make the mistake of consolidating a lower rate. All right, because if you've got multiple student loans, like most of us do, based on how many years you were in school, all right. You might have one year where, like, there was a year during COVID where the interest rate on student loans was like 2.65%. Well, you don't want to consolidate that loan. You want to leave that loan alone and pay that 2.65%. You wouldn't want to consolidate your 2.265 into today's 4.75 or whatever the case may be. So you really need to do a little bit of due diligence and make sure you're consolidating the right things. Check on interest rate reductions for auto pay. Most of your servicers for government guaranteed student loans, Nelnet, Great Lakes. So I'm missing, there's a third one. So there's three big ones. Nelnet, Great Lakes. If you'll do auto payments, they'll typically reduce your interest rate about 0.25% for auto pay. So a lot of times you can lower interest rate if you do that. Make bi-weekly payments. So if you're gotta make the math easy, if you've got a $500 a month payment, do a every 2 weeks $250 payment. What that ends up doing is that instead of making 12 full payments, you end up making 26 half payments, and it's the equivalent of paying one extra payment a year. when you set up a bi-weekly payment, or same way mortgage, you better look at bi-weekly payments on a mortgage, okay? Make extra payments when possible as part of your debt snowball, so some of those student loan debts are smaller, so for me, any student loan under $25,000 probably just needs to be included in your debt snowball. Okay, if you've got those $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 student loans, that might be a little bit different.
What do you do when all of your loans are under like? So my student loans are broken down into semesters.
Semesters. School years.
One is unsubsidized, one is subsidized. Both of those are under 25,000 each.
I would probably.
You start with one in my debt snowball and then add another one.
Yeah, and start with your unsubsidized. Yeah, you always want to, when you're going after student loans, you always want to start unsubsidized first, because those are the ones that are going to be accumulating interest. That make sense? Yeah. And again, when you're talking about that, a large amount of student loan debt like that, you may just make that its own. Like I've had a couple of people that I've been counseling with, where we're just like, all right, let's get you out of all your other debt before we even start to tackle student loan debt. Now, the one thing we did do is make sure that on their unsubsidized loans, that we were paying at least the interest. So that way the balances weren't increasing. All right. And so with that being said, I have had a couple examples where I've worked with people where we just had them pay off everything except your student loans. Let's get you down to house student loan. And then we'll kind of take, okay, now that we're out of all this other debt, let's go after student loan stuff. Okay. And then another easy one is that, again, you guys are full commission people, so it applies for raises at work on that. But if you have a goal of how many closings you're going to close, and you close an extra one that month, nothing wrong with tossing that onto your student loans if you've got your budget correctly in place. Okay, student loans are tough. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is definitely, when you think about people who are really millennials and younger. For Gen Xers like me, it really wasn't as big of a thing as it is now. But I mean, even with kids these days, as I work with high school kids, I'm very conscious, and I make lots of guidance counselors and sometimes parents mad, because I'm like, look, you don't know what you want to do. You're going to waste a bunch of time and a bunch of money on college. There's nothing wrong. We did a case study out. I need to put it in this of taking somebody who went to school and got a 4-year degree in 8 years with no debt. So basically they paid their way as they went, but they took 8 years to do it. Versus somebody who starts at 18, graduates at 22, but they did it all with student loan debt. It actually, so the student A who took 8 years to do it, so they're actually done debt free at 26. So they started investing 10% of their pay at 26. Student B had to wait until 30 to pay off all their student loan debt before they started investing 10% of their income. Student A actually ends up with about $300,000 more dollars in their investments at retirement than student B does. And there's nothing magic to that, it's math. It just really is. So with that being said, again, that's kind of off topic in relation to student loans, but again, it is one of those things where we're almost to a point with education where you have to look at it as an investment like you would any other investment, right? And make sure that, because like I got a client right now, bless her heart, she's only able to qualify for a house that doesn't exist in Fayette County right now because she's got $85,000 in student loan debt with a music degree. She's a part-time music minister and works at Target. And it's like, and I'm not being negative to her. It's just like her dude, as they say in gambling, the scratch wouldn't worth the itch, but it just that was not a sound investment from a financial standpoint. But anyway, another topic for another day. If you're related to a guidance counselor, don't shoot me. Say things like that. All right, last few things, then we'll answer as many questions you guys want to answer. Number one, you do it. We are living through I think I told this when I told you guys my story. When we got to that point where we were just fighting to be able to keep the lights on in my food. I sat down with a good friend of mine who was a bankruptcy attorney, because ironically, our number 2 source of business in the mortgage business outside of real estate agents before the housing crash was bankruptcy attorneys. Because we could do home loans one day out of bankruptcy. That was a good idea, right? So with that being said, I'm sitting down with my friend, the bankruptcy attorney, and he's like, do 5 bankruptcies. It's like, call no boss. Your industry just collapsed around you. There's nothing you could have done to see this coming. Give it up. And Crystal, I just thought about it and prayed about it, and really, I just got to a point, I was like, look, you borrow all this money, so people are gonna pay them back. And I can still, my dad always, he still says this, you're only as good as you're only as good as what you tell people that you're gonna do. And so we borrowed all this money from these people and told them we were gonna pay it back. They ain't gonna get it back the way they wanna get it back. It ain't gonna be all the time, and it ain't gonna be as much as they want. We're gonna figure out how to get it all back. And do what? Yeah, they do like getting it all the time. And I mean, just crazy stuff, and I just got to the point where I don't want to call it a game, but like, how about one call? I still remember, no, it's Bank of America. Bank of America would call me, and then it's Bank of America credit card, we had maxed out like $25,000, because we had used it on a flip house that did flip, and that was what. And so, Bank of America would call, and I'd be like, man, I'm so glad y'all called me. We were looking at the budget, and it came down to paying the electric bill or you guys. I got these two little girls, and it's cold in Kentucky in the winter. So this week we went with the electric bill. So I'm really sorry we didn't have any money to pay you this week, but if you call me back next week, we might have some money to pay. Those are real life conversations I was having, y'all. And what can they say? They're like, okay, thanks, and that's just what it was. And so with that being said, you can do it, no matter now how far down the hole your hole might be, not a 25-foot hole, it may be a 100-foot hole. You can do it. You can do it. You just have to get committed to it and learn that there's going to be a season of life. And it seems like the older I get, that old saying of the days the days are long, but the years are short. Like, man, the older I get, the truer that becomes. And 3 or 4 years to get out of debt sounds like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not a long time. So you can do it. Get on a $0 based budget and stick to it. Talk about the last one, cut out your fluff. All right, no extras when you're trying to get this out. Make this a family affair. Talk to your kids about it. Talk to your parents about it. I don't care. Let them know. And you can do it. And you just have to go through that period of where you live like no one else. So eventually, okay. So that is, like I said, little shorter presentation than the last time. What questions here in the room, online, do you guys have for me, if any? What are the questions?
I have I guess a quick question or a topic prompt. So in the beginning, there is debt, and then there's home loan, there's what we consider good debt, right? Could you kind of parse out the difference between those two things and like why we consider a mortgage good debt versus
so the only reason why I consider mortgage good debt versus any other debt is that it's affixed to an asset that appreciates in value and positively impacts your net worth. So for me, real estate debt isn't bad debt. But notice I didn't say mortgage debt was great debt. Like, I'm gonna pay off your house guy. Like, there's a lot of people out there that will tell you to take out a big long mortgage, keep it forever because of leverage and different things like that. Why would I use my money when I can use somebody else's money? To me, that's risk. I had a conversation with an agent this week where she was looking at what home equity line she pays off. She's got an equity line on an investment property and an equity line on her primary residence. And I'm like, pay it all on your primary residence. I was like, you do not need that risk associated with the roof that's over your children's head. And that is risk, but the only way you can justify over time, because real estate always wins, right? You don't fight the king. This is something, if you're not preaching this to your clients right now, you should be. Real estate always wins, period. It is not hype, it's math. Like, I can pull up what we go over our clients with, what's called a total cost analysis. I can show you a 10-year projection of where you'll be in a house. And real estate will always win, no matter what rate, what appreciation, what payment, what you pay for the house. Over time, real estate will always win. That's why it's good debt.
I get that question a lot, like, it's. I'm paying too much.
Yeah, and you just have to give them the number. That's
when I get my money back.
Well, and that's one of those things where, because here's the truth of the matter, not to get too far off topic, like, it would be really hard to justify in the moment. If somebody came to me and was like, I'm gonna buy a house, I'm gonna live here for the next 18 months for 2 years. I don't know if that's a great decision right now. But if you're gonna live there 3 years plus, I can show you the math, and I can show you the math at a 7% interest and show you it's a good decision. Because the coolest thing about our market, as somebody who's been in this business for a long time now, is we've got one of the most stable real estate markets in the country. Like when you strip out the last 3 years, you strip out the couple years after the housing crash, our market appreciates 2 to 4% religiously. Strong economy with tech, with Toyota, all the manufacturing here, tech, Timber Sealy's here. We just have a very strong housing economy, and we have a natural lack of supply because of all the farms. Now that's why we're dealing with a lot of what we're dealing with right now is that. And when I talk to my buddies in Omaha, Nebraska, and Greenville, and Colorado Springs, and things like that, their listing accounts right now are running 200 to 300 houses more available than ours for a comparable size market because they have new construction that we don't have. And so for me, I think you have to combat that with the numbers, right? It's not magic, it's not magic. Just strip the emotion of that question away, and that's something we've done a really good job of making sure our clients understand why this is still a good financial decision. That answer your question. I'm sorry. We went off the rails there.
For sure, I mean,
That's a good question.
yeah, in the basic sense.
Yeah.
I understand that, right, but I'd be curious for you as a mortgage loan officer who is also helping people get out of debt,
Mhm.
how you explain that, so that's what you did.
Yeah. I mean, I think we overcomplicate the end goal. And so like whenever we're going to, I hate using the word retire, but whatever we're going to do, whatever we're going to do in our latter years. The goal is to have a big fat pile of money we can live on the rest of our life and pay for it. That's really where we want to land, right? And so for me, mortgage debt is not something you want to have. Now you can get into the nuance, like if you really want to get on in the weeds on investment property, for example, you can definitely do that. But at the end of the day, an investment property owned free and clear is a better investment property than the one that's got mortgage on it. I mean, it just is, because the name of the game in investment real estate is cash flow. Well, the least amount of debt that you have on investment real estate, the more cash flow you're going to have to generate, unless you're just investing for appreciation, where it's buying here, wait to market. Like right now is not an investor appreciation market. But if you were buying in '99, that turned out to be a really good improvement. Like I've got investor clients right now who are unloading properties like crazy because they're worth 40% more than what they paid for them in 2018, 2019, 2017. So yeah, so I think that's overall that's the plan, and that's one of those things where you want to begin with the end in mind, right? Jim Collins, Good to Great, talks about that, and I think that's a good word for finances. Is you want to begin with the end in mind. What does financial success look like for me, and really fleshing that out, or for as a couple, for us. Like I think there was an investment company a few years ago who had a really funny commercial, but it made a lot of sense. Was these people never carrying around their number? So like one guy had like 5.4623 number, and the other guy had, and it was really what it represented was this was the amount of money that they had to save in order to be able to retire the way they wanted to retire. And so like if you don't, see, it was a Zig Ziglar line, like if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time. Well, that's how it is with finances. So if you don't know where you're going, it's going to be, and again, that's why when we talk about budgeting, if you don't understand why you're budgeting, you don't understand why you want to get out of debt, then you'll never do it because there's no motivation behind it. That makes sense?
Yeah.
What else? Most people have the least amount of questions of anybody I teach these classes.
That are good or a bad thing.
Maybe they had a lot more money than Zoomers, do y'all have any questions? Or are they all asleep or gone? They gone.
Well, we still got 3 people on Zoom. You use credit card?
Do I use credit card? Yes, I do. I pay them off weekly. I pay them off weekly. I pay my balance due because I play the credit. That's really what I pay my credit cards off weekly. Whatever my current balance is on, we make our budgets on Saturday mornings. Yes, I still budget every Saturday. We pay off our credit cards every Saturday. And a lot of the reasons, this sounds stupid, but it's just aggravating to me because I'm the old guy who still balances his checkbook. So if you order more than 4 or 5 things on Amazon, it comes out of multiple charges. So it's not what you pay for it. It drives me nuts. So a lot of times, anything anytime we order anything, like we're going on vacation next week, so we had to buy all of our like sunscreen, all the crap my daughters wanted to take on vacation. So there was like 9 things that we ordered from Amazon for vacation next week, and it was literally coming out in 4 different shipments, which means that was gonna be 4 different charges on my checking account. Which drives me crazy, drives me mad. That's not a good excuse, but it is what it is. And so we put that on the credit card, it'll all pin this week and I'll pay it off on Saturday, so that way I don't have 5 Amazon charges on my checking account because I'm a freak like that. It just bugs me. So, same thing with groceries, you know, like you'll order your groceries, because again, I told y'all last time, we put this everything, we don't go into the grocery store to order our food anymore. And so like if you place your order, well, by the time you get to Kroger to pick it up, it was like, well, X, Y, and Z was missing. And so the total you wrote down in your checkbook is actually $20 less, or we substituted for this, it's $10, whatever the case may be. So little things like that. We do a lot of automated cell phone bills, Netflix, that type of stuff. We put those on credit cards. Because here's the credits we pay. And we're not actually doing that here unless these guys ask me to do it. The next class in the Don't Be Broke series is actually credit scoring. Because the myth around credit scoring is that you have to be in debt to have a good credit score. That's 100% not true. I pay off my credit cards weekly. I've got 2 mortgages. That's all I have on my credit report. My credit score the last time I checked it was 923. When I missed out on my
It was
Eight.
what?
820, 823, 850 that I should have. Yeah. And that was when I made an offer on my 8th investment property that I didn't get to buy. I got out with my cash.
Because I can't love it. You're not a little bitter.
I'm a little pissed right now. If you don't have cash to buy an investment property right now, it is not a lot.
You're not.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. Things happen.
Yeah,
That's it.
and you went to, I think my friend went to find something.
Oh, my goodness.
That is the. I'm about to say that.
Yeah.
That, I think it was about 6 years.
Yeah.
I just went to the minutes, so we are finally.
One other caveat I'll throw you on the credit card thing, I only keep 2. So I've got a personal and I've got a benchmark. I only use 2 credit cards. I use one for benchmark expenses, one for personal expenses. We only have 2 credit cards.
And you pay both those off on a weekly basis.
Whatever
Down
current
to-
balance-
down to
whatever
zero.
whatever the current balance is on Saturday, I pay.
Cause that's always the counter to the Dave Ramsey philosophy, right? The idea that you don't have a credit card, period.
Right.
But I think there's a strong argument to have it if you do it.
Well, so here, and this is what I tell customers, I'm not anti-credit card, I'm anti-interest.
Right.
So my thing with credit card is if you can't afford to pay it off at the end of every month, you can't have a credit card.
Right.
The reason why people like Ramsey and Borman and people like that are out there preaching, that Ramsey's philosophy comes a lot from. You have to, again, it's all psychology, right? We're off of this here, but Ramsey, the reason why Ramsey teaches a lot of the things he teaches is hot stove principle. He touched his stove, he got burned, he went bankrupt. He teaches how to never do that ever again, right? Well, if you don't have a credit card, and he recognizes, and same thing with Susie Warren, Ramsey's more popular in the South and evangelical circles and things like that. Susie Warren's as big as Ramsey is on the East Coast. Like she had a show on CNBC and her stuff. She's got a book called 9 Steps to Financial Freedom. That's a wonderful book. She teaches debt avalanche, not snowball. There's just a few different nuances in what they teach. But with that being said, she teaches no credit card debt as well. And it's because they recognize most people aren't disciplined enough to have it. And if you aren't disciplined enough to have one, like if I ever got in a position to where I couldn't pay off my credit card on Saturday, I'd put it away. I wouldn't have it anymore. Because for me, it's a tool of convenience. And now that we have the condo in Florida, it's a tool of sky miles. Because it pays for me to fly down to the condo, because having an investment property 650 miles away adds a whole other different set of challenges that you don't have when you got one 6 miles away. So having the ability to be able to fly down there once a month and do, like we just had barn doors put in, and I got to put down there, things like stuff like that. So again, it's just nuance, but overall, like I think if you're in debt and you're digging your way out, I think the best policy is to not use it.
Working on rice usage, like I put my brother as on my credit. He doesn't use it, but I know like it comes to go on the
Yeah,
credit.
no, that's a great question. I'm doing that with my son right now. My
Okay.
My daughter is actually on my credit card. We started with her as an authorized user. We've added her, but she doesn't have a card. So I'm just telling her to let her credit
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah,
Because what we're gonna do with her when she buys her first house is we're gonna buy it together. I'm gonna go on as a non-occupied co-borrower. So it'll be a primary residence loan. And then we're just gonna keep it as our first investment property together when she goes and buys it.
and then that stuff that you take them off as authorized, you do, does that do anything? Is that-
Absolutely, it does. So a lot of times what will happen is it's like, we'll get people who use credit reports, they're an authorized user on an account. So a lot of times it's parents who put their kid on their credit card as an authorized user, they're in college or whatever, so they have card use, whatever. Well, the parents just let the balance get too high. And so all we have to do is have that client call and say, hey, remove me as an authorized user. And a lot of times they'll make their credit score jump like 40 points. So it's one of the kind of tricks of the trade is that's the first thing we look at. If we've got somebody who's got a lower credit score is that do they have any medical collections? Because medical collections are super easy to get off credit. Are they an authorized user on anything? Because a lot of times that $100 medical collection they didn't have, it'll get deleted. That's a huge spike in credit score if they're an authorized user on mom's credit card. And mom's got a $7,000 balance on a $10,000 card, they can just remove themselves so their credit score will pop like that. It's a much better deal.
Outside of credit card debt and student loan debt, what do you think are the next couple? Like biggest things that keep people from qualifying?
Cars a big thing right now. People are really overspending on cars, especially when you look at where car interest rates are right now. I think you look at things as percentage of income, right? And so for me, people don't really take the time to think about, okay, I got a husband and wife. Husband's driving a $400 a month car, wife's driving a $400 a month car. So we got $800 a month of car payments. Now we're paying car insurance on those cars. So now that's like another couple $100 a month. And we're, estimating about $50 a month on average for oil changes. So now I'm up to $1,050 a month and we're putting gas in those cars at, $40, $50 a week, whatever the case may be. The next thing you know, you got couples spending $1,300 a month on cars that may combine maybe $80,000 a year. And they got 1/7 of their income tied up in car debt. 20%, 25% of your income going towards you being able to go to and from work, you're probably spending too much money going to and from work. And like a lot of times when I talk, it's fun for you guys because you're like me, you're commissioned, right? But a lot of times with W-2 wage earners, I'll actually break it down. You know how many hours you have to work to afford this car? And when they're like, damn, bro, I'm just gonna half a paycheck to drive. Like, you don't know how many clients I've had sell a car and they met me.
I drive around town all the time. What's the heck do people afford on this car?
Yeah, oh man, it's crazy. So cars, so that debt to income ratio piece is a big thing, and then just utilization of credit cards. Most people don't understand the credit card game, and they don't understand how it works. So anytime you owe more than 30% of the limit on a credit card, it's credit negative, makes your credit score go down. All right, and so I tell people all the time, look, if you're gonna play the credit score game, the credit card game, every time they offer you a credit limit increase, take it. Well, why? Because that lowers your utilization percentage. It's going to make it a better credit score. So, like my Amex card that I use for benchmarks got a $35,000 limit. There's going more. I mean, I've rarely got like $2,000 on that card, right? So my utilization so one of the reasons why I got an 823 credit score is because my utilization percentage averages like 8. On average, and that's one of the two main things that impact credit. 65% of your credit score is on time payments and utilization percentages. And so when you look at people who don't qualify, debt to income ratios around they're driving too much car, or their utilization percentages are out of whack, and their credit score lower.
Funds affect the utilization.
Do what?
Does your student loan affect your utilization?
They do not cover their installment loans. Installment loans. Yep. Only revolving accounts impact utilization. Cars, student loans do not, credit cards do. Lines of credit. Yeah. A lot of people have that overdraft account. That happens to a lot of people. We'll have a lot of people who have like $500 overdraft on their checking account. And they let that thing hit a few times. The next thing you know, they got $250 on their overdraft account. They don't realize that's a revolving account. So it's got their credit score jacked by 30 points.
Like I've heard you find. Things like this too, like What if you want, what if you have multiple credit cards, you want to get rid of some, like, close them? I've heard that that's.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can actually hurt your credit score.
What if you don't want to use it? It's still, I've heard that if you want to keep up, if you have.
Well, eventually the credit card company is gonna close them anyway. If you leave a zero, like I just had, I just had a Lowe's card close that I had from way back in the day that I paid off, and they finally closed. Like, they just sent me a letter and was like, if you don't use your Lowe's card, we're gonna close it. I'm like, ah. And so, but they'll eventually close. That's different, because then it's creditor closed, not you closed. And so you want to do it on time. Here's the thing about credit score. This is one of the things I teach in the credit score class. Okay, you have to understand that your credit score is not a badge of honor. Credit score tells people how much debt you've been in and how well you paid it back, and being in debt is not a good thing. And so credit score is stupid and broken. But if you understand it, it's stupid and broken. It's super easy to manipulate. And the only time your credit score matters is when you're going to borrow money. And unless you're buying a house, borrowing money is not a good thing. So we put way too much emphasis on credit score. Like, it's one of the things I hate about what I do, because it's amazing how many times I get people because they have old bad stuff and no new good stuff, and they got a really low credit score, so they end up having an interest rate of 0.5%, 0.75%, things like that, because they don't have anything new good to offset all bad, right? And that's not fair. But life's not fair. But with that being said, you know, it's almost like the analogy I always use is that my way. When I eat like crap and I don't go to the gym, I gain weight. Like right now. We're being honest, okay? But when I'm in the gym and I'm eating salads for lunch and all this stuff, I lose weight. My weight is a product of my action. That's how credit scores work. Your credit score is a product of your action. So if you just focus on making sure your bills get paid on time, your balances stay low, you don't borrow a bunch of money, you're always going to have good credit. Because it's going to be the product of that action. Does that make sense? It's the end result. It's no different in real estate. In real estate, if you focus on calls, face-to-faces, all those different things, you're going to have close. Because there's lead indicators, there's lag indicators. You just got to make sure you're focused on the lead indicators. And if you focus on the lead indicators the correct way, the lag indicators are always going to turn out well. Does that make sense? What else? It's a good conversation. I'm a geek. I love this stuff.
Do old credit card debts fall off of your credit score eventually? Or no pay?
Like if they're charged off?
Yeah.
Typically no, because typically what they do is churn them. Again, it's one of the evils of that. So you have a charged off account on your credit, $5,000, whatever the case may be. It gets to that point at 7 years now where that would fall off. That creditor will sell it to another creditor. So that debt goes away and it shows up as a brand new and actually makes credit worse. You're always best with charged off debt. If you're purely focused on credit, like you're, for somebody's trying to buy a house, things like that, you really want to go to the creditors and try to settle it. Because most of the time, charged off debt, they've already wrote that off as bad debt. They're going to settle that for 25, 50, 60 cents on the dollar. Now, some of the credit card companies though are particularly nasty. Like Capital One, for example, is like their customer service ranks is one of the highest levels credit card, but if you skip out on them, they're coming at you. Like, it's amazing how many how many real estate deals we've had blow up over the years because they had a charged off credit card. Capital One filed a judgment lien against them. They didn't know it was there. And we go to do title on them when we run them, and they got a $8,000 judgment lien from Capital One because of the charged off credit card. American Express is the same way. They ain't gonna let you off the hook. So yeah, so you gotta be careful with those. Again, everybody's gotta do their own thing. if you owe it, pay it. I think that's just kind of my philosophy. I don't really apologize for that. If you owe it, pay it. You borrow it. And like there's all these debt consolidation companies that are out there, CCS, different ones that are out there, they'll actually typically make your payment worse because they negotiate on your behalf. But then they spread out your money. And so almost always you're going to end up on that stuff. So I'm not big on like this consumer credit counseling service. That usually works out really bad. What's the easiest thing to do is be disciplined and pay it off, but it's also at the same time the hardest thing to do, is be disciplined and pay it off. You know, because nobody wants to give up their eating out, they're going to the movies and their vacations and things like that. That is what it is.
It's amazing, because like, in America here, we use the credit, that back at home in Africa. Everything that everybody has is basically your house, you buy it,
Mhm.
your phone, you buy it. So it's amazing for me to see that,
Oh, yeah, it's a,
and then in America, we can't do that, in Africa, they have cell phone, but it's paid off.
Mhm.
It's, like, my house, it's paid off, I'm like, oh, she could just go back and start.
yeah, it's funny you say that, because that's a very Western thing. It's like when you go, like I do a lot of shit with Guatemala. Like you don't meet people with that in Guatemala. Like you don't meet people with credit cards. Like if you run into somebody with a credit card, it's a weird thing. Like the only people using credit cards in Guatemala are gringos. I mean, it's just what it is.
The food costs, like.
Right, it's a very, it's a, that,
It's mine, I don't even have to worry
Yeah.
about.
that is a very Western culture thing.
I've heard a lot of Hispanic clients and those are times that families have a significant, you know, if they can.
Mhm.
And
It's culture.
they'll always say, I had an Asian client recently who was putting down like 200,000. And he kept getting beat out on cash. He was like, this is crazy, Americans don't have cash, like, where's the?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of it's coming out of 401ks right now. There's a lot of really, really bad advice. That's another class. All right, guys. Well, I hope these two classes have been helpful for you guys. Like I said, this is something that Michael and the team here asked me to do. This is not mortgage, and I didn't give you guys a business card this time. But I didn't want this to be me coming in here asking you for deals. I wanted this to just be something that I'm doing for you to help you. So I hope it's been helpful. Again, reach out. You know, this is a big part of what I do. I think this is really what separates what I do with my mortgage clients, is the fact that we do help our clients make smart financial decisions when they're buying real estate and we sell them buy homes, because it is a financial decision. It's not a home buying decision. And people, for the most part, appreciate that. So this was all for you guys. So thank Ryan, thank Mike, and thank Chloe and all the people here for having me do this for you guys, because it was really just a help out kind of thing. Okay,
We appreciate that.
cool. All right.
Good.
Bye, Zoomers.
Bahar says.
Bye,
goodbye.
thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm always.
Keith, you want to get on the books before we get out of here?
Yes.
All right. I'm on vacation.